All right. So we are excited to be here. I'd like to see just by a show of like reactions, how many people in this group are retired already? Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So my husband and I, it's my husband Tony. We're gonna walk you through our experience navigating his retirement, and then just share some things that we kind of learned along the way, and some additional resources. And then we'll take questions at the end. I was excited to sit in on Cindy's workshop. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on our podcast where we talked about this and just kind of our shared journeys of our husband's work and what it brought home. All right, so let's get started. Um, I'll introduce myself real quick, and then my husband will introduce himself. My name is Medina Baumgart. I am a licensed psychologist in California and a board certified specialist in police and public safety psychology. I work full time as an embedded psychologist with a large metropolitan police agency out here in California. Um, and outside of that, I do a private practice, which is primarily consultation and training. My husband and I, we've been together for 23 years. I came around during the last half of his career, which was the most fun and least fun
Correct.
time. Much like how Cindy was saying, we're very similar in that getting into this, signing up to be in a relationship with a cop did not come with an instruction manual. I was pretty much told by other spouses, good luck. And yeah, we had a lot of fumbling and things that we learned along the way in terms of communication, what worked, what didn't work. Um, a lot of that fast forward through to his retirement. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, but we really had to go back to basics and kind of start fresh as where we're trying to navigate his retirement. Because of his retirement, I like much like Cindy, I was, my nerd brain was trying to find information on retirement, and I found some general stuff more geared towards the cops, the law enforcement officers, first responders, but I didn't really find a lot geared toward spouses or really any information for first responders that said, okay, hey, these things are going to happen. Here's why it's going to happen and what you can do about it. And so fast forward, after being on Cindy's podcast, we had talked about a book and different people asking about it, and I was very reluctant to do that, but Cindy actually helped me out and encouraged me to do that. So we have that book that came out last year that kind of outlines our spicy fun
Sure.
times navigating retirement and hopefully helping you guys out too. I'll let my husband introduce himself now.
Sure. So my name is Anthony Baumgart. I was a police officer for just over 29 years. I started at San Gabriel Police Department uh, on my 21st birthday. That was my date of hire. I did 14 and a half years there. Did patrol, got in the detective bureau, working robbery, homicide, and then got into street narcotics and on to LA Impact, was a major task force for major narcotics. That became what I fell in love with. So I ended up moving from San Gabriel PD over to the California Department of Justice Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement, and I did another 14 and a half, little over there. So total just over 29 years in when I retired. Um, I get asked a lot, what was I thinking marrying a psychologist? So I just want to point out she was not a psychologist when we got married. I did not do this on purpose.
And trust me when I say if I try to use my psychologist voice with him, he reminds me real quick, just like I reminded him to not use his cop voice with me.
Yes.
Um, we're going to kind of walk you guys through from making the decision to retire all the way through kind of fumbling through it. You want to talk about why? you decided to retire?
Sure. So everybody has their own reasons as the time starts coming up. Mine was a little easier than most. In California, I don't know how many of you are California officers, but most of us are in a pension system that maxes at 30 years. You do 30 years, you 90% of your pay, you're done, and then beyond 30 years, you're working for free. So my last 5 years of work, however, started falling apart. They dismantled the Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement. They laid off half the workforce. I was out of work for 3 months. Had to go get another job for 3 months, working for an agency I did not like. Got rehired by DOJ about 2 years after layoffs, so I could finish out my time. But like I said, narcotics was gone, so I bounced from bureau to bureau, none of which I liked. Um, so as my time came up, I had no reason to stay. So for me, it's really easy. I was pretty much done. I was angry at the world. I was angry at everything, bosses, people, the layoffs, just everything, politics. Um, so for me, the decision was a lot easier. Some people, it's a lot harder. I've worked since I was about 13 years old. So working is my nature. It's what I know. It's all I know. Um, so anyway, so for me, I just after my 50th birthday, when I was just over 29, well, barely over 29 years, I have my paperwork in front of me. It takes 3 months to retire. You got to turn your paperwork. You can go 3 months later. I fill out all my paperwork. I call Medina. I call my wife. I say, hey, I've got the paperwork in front of me. Got it filled out. I can turn it in now and be gone in 3 months, so I can wait about 8 months and max my retirement, get a little bit more in my check, um, and go then. And what do you want me to do? And without missing a beat, she just says, "Oh, fucking retire right now. Turn in the paperwork." So, so I did. Turn the paperwork. 3 months later, I was gone, and I know why she made that decision, and I agree with it. But I'm gonna let her explain that part.
Thank you. So, as you guys can probably guess, he said that last 5 years wasn't the greatest. And that stuff definitely spilled over on the home front. I got the angry, grumpy, tired husband that walked through the door. Um, One of his favorite things to do during those last 5 years, because he was so angry, was to call one of his partners on his 2 hour drive home, and they could be mutually angry together for
Yep.
2 hours, which was not that helpful.
So I was a really fun person when I walked in the door.
So I got the supercharged version of the anger and everything. And from the second he walked through the door, and as a wife, I just was very frustrated and exhausted. It genuinely broke my heart to see my husband, who loved the job that he did, and for all of that to start falling apart, and for him to be miserable, because he really, really, really enjoyed being a police officer. So when it came down to it, I get that phone call. Hey, I'm a few months out. I can max it out, or I can turn in my paper now. And I, as he mentioned, without skipping a beat, said to turn in the dang paperwork, because I was just done. And we did try, like, during that time, that last 5 years. Um, I don't I don't really think we were arguing a ton. We did have some conversations about it, and me just sharing my frustration. As Cindy mentioned earlier, I really just disengaged. He came home. He didn't have to say a word. I could feel how angry he was when he came home, and I just kind of disengaged and let him do his thing. Which, when that stacks over 5 years, I just started feeling like I was unable to actually connect with him. To be honest, there were times where I really didn't want to be around him. And I would just go kind of hang out in a different part of the house. Because that anger, I was just done with it at that point. And talk about the process.
Process is always fun. Um, the retirement process itself can be interesting, I guess. Um, it's different depending on where you are, and I have seen that it's better for the most part if you're from a small agency, and the larger agency you are in, the worse it is. Um, I give you a little quick example. My buddies that stayed at San Gabriel PD, which was a small PD, I think we're about 53 sworn. Um, when they retired, the city gave them a big retirement party. They got plaques. The mayor was there. The chief was there. They treated them really nice. Thanked them for all their service, 30 years, whatever. It was really beautiful. I was at a couple of them. Um, and, and that's the right way to treat somebody that gave you 30 years of their life. So now that's forward to me working for the state of California, not a small agency. When I turned in my paperwork, like I said, it takes 3 months. So I let my boss know, hey, I'm done. I'm retiring. Turned in my letter to her on top of that. So she knew I was gone in 3 months. Um, Nobody cared. Nobody said anything to me. She was just like, all right, thanks. Took my letter. So 3 months go by. I haven't heard anything from anybody. The only people I even interacted with were my team. My office was huge. It had multiple teams doing whatever. And I never heard anything from anybody. Um, Down to my last week, down to my last day. I show up to work on my last day. Remind everybody it's my last day. My desk was already cleared out. Mm, Nobody took me to lunch. Nobody really said anything. My team said, good luck, basically, but that's it. Never heard from anybody else. Boss didn't care. I also came down to I had a state car. So I went in, turned in all my paperwork, as you do, I mean, all my gear. My boss went through everything meticulously, making sure I gave it all back, handed me a receipt saying that they got all my stuff back. Um, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, so who's taking me home? Nobody had even thought about it. Not my boss, not anybody. Oh yeah, state car. You don't have that anymore. How do you get home? Nobody volunteered either right away. Everybody just kind of dumbfounded, like, I don't know. So luckily, I had a friend that retired about a year before for the same agency who happened to be down there. And he volunteered to take me home. Nobody actively working wanted to take me home. So I get home and I'm telling Medina about it, and I'm like, I gave these motherfuckers all these years, and they gave me a receipt and showed me the fucking door. And I said, retiring versus being fired, there's no difference. Had I been fired on that day, had I been called into the boss's office, told you are fired, you're a fuck up, you're done, I would have got treated the same, exact same as my retirement. That that is amazing. And to this day, I still can't believe that, and I'm absolutely amazed at it. Um, so I don't wish anybody that process. Everybody else works somewhere that appreciates you a little more, that takes the effort to appreciate you, to let you know they care. You gave them your life. Um, and they don't just hand you a receipt and show you the front door. Because that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. On top of that, when I went back to the office to see friends after that, obviously my code didn't work anymore. They took that, no problem. But when they did buzz me in, I had to have an escort badge and be walked around the office like I was some fucking outsider who has never been in that building before. Spent 14 years in the building, and now I'm on escort because I don't work there anymore. So, yeah, don't recommend the state of California to anybody. Don't work there. Don't do anything there. I don't even recommend living here. Get the hell away from it. So,
Um, when he retired, that last day, I was actually working in the jails at the time. So I didn't have my cell phone on me. I had no way of directly communicating with him. Um, I knew it was his last day. We had talked about it a little bit. I don't know why either of us didn't think about him having to turn in his work car. We just didn't think about it.
well, it shouldn't have been a thought process. That should have been taken care of.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. The finding out, coming home from work and he's literally just sitting there looking lost and angry and sad and just like this whole mix of things and talking to him, how are you doing? How are you feeling? He literally said, I gave them my life and they handed me a receipt. That for me was a massive gut punch. I was sad for him. I was very, very, very angry at his bosses at the agency. Like, how dare you, treat this man this way after all of the time he gave you guys? Um, it was interesting for me because as a psychologist, I have the tools and training to help people who are struggling with things, who are feeling these things. But when it comes to my husband, wifey brain took over, and I literally just felt so helpless, so powerless, so angry, and I just honestly didn't know what to do with any of that. And so, kind of one of the things from that I took from that, if you're in a leadership position um, at your agency, I would definitely look at how how you process out your people. What does that look like? Oftentimes they have to turn in gear. They shouldn't do that alone. The day that they retire, they shouldn't do that alone. If you have a peer support team or are part of a peer support team, think about incorporating retirees or having your peers accompany that person when they're going in to turn in that stuff. So they're not left feeling like they got fired or that they didn't matter or that it everything they just got discarded and thrown aside. Um, but really that I think kind of set the tone. So not him not being happy the past 5 years, the last 5 years of his job, coupled with that experience.
Not being happy.
Yeah.
Understatement.
Kind of set the stage for retirement. Oops. Why am I not? Uh-oh. Technical difficulty. Here we go. There we go.
So before we move on, one other thing I forgot on my retirement process is they obviously take my working creds from me, but they did not, 3 months notice, they did not have my retirement creds for me. So it was go home, they'll show up in the mail eventually, which they did about 3 months later. So yeah, that was also fun. But I was in the mood and I did get to tell my chief to go fuck himself on my way out the door. So that made me feel a little better.
Want to talk about how it initially felt?
So after retirement, um, there are some things you can do to change a lot, but I'm going to get into that a little later. Right now, I'm just going to tell you how it felt when I first went. Um, you don't have to go back to work anymore. You feel like you're on vacation. Big weight lifted off my shoulders because I wasn't angry at everything. So for about 3 months, everything's great. You you're getting your check in the mail. You are doing whatever you want. You literally feel like you're on a long vacation. Part of you still thinks you're supposed to go back to work. Part of you still thinks like, shit, did I turn in my time card? Or shit, did I turn in this? So that's kind of the back of your head still. Takes a while to shake that, but for the most part, everything is good and you feel like you're on vacation. Um, but it doesn't last. I will tell you that it doesn't last at all. Um, Other thing that I wasn't kind of ready for is so, like I said, my wife was not always a psychologist. There was a time when she was home a lot, um, and I was at work all the time. So, one of our problems was she was always home to me. If I was home, she was home. I get home from work, she was home. When I left for work, she was home. My weekend, she was home. She was always home. And you don't think that's going to affect you, but it does. And then when I retired, she was working. And now I'm always home. And I'm like, this is great. I am just always here. I am happy. And then you tell them how it felt for you. It was a reversal.
I think I'll talk more about that here in a second, but the initial, I think kind of one of our fatal flaws at the start of this whole thing was, he was obviously not happy that last 5 years. He was fed up. I was fed up at home dealing with him being fed up and all of that anger spill over. So I think both of us very naively thought that the grass was going to be greener on the other side. I can't wait till you retire. When you retire, everything's going to be so much better. And we kind of left it there. We did the retirement seminar, the finances. We genuinely felt equipped. And so, during this, I call it like the honeymoon period. I felt this immediate relief It's kind of that vacation mode. He, want to hang out in the backyard with your, cigar by the fire pit because you can. Go ahead, do it. You earned it. And then that he wasn't angry, which I absolutely love that. And I think, yeah, we kind of just settled into it over time. Uh, what he mentioned regarding uh
Always being
stuff
home.
that, yeah, always being home and stuff kind of coming up. um I'm gonna let you talk a little bit more about as it settled in, how things kind of shifted,
But
and then I'll complain about you always being home.
yeah, that'll work. That'll work. So for most people, I'm going to guess that that vacation part lasts around the same, around 3 months. But if you're like me, you haven't had 3 months off unless you got injured. You haven't had 3 months off for probably 45 years. Um, because we all start working young. Our generation works, young. Um, so after about 3 months, I started to get bored. I also started to feel not like myself. All I'd known was being a cop. All I've known was police work. Um, all these skills and tools I learned were now completely useless. All this knowledge I had useless. Um, and I just started to feel lost. Like I don't know who I am anymore. So of course you do that. I need to go back to work. I need to find something to do. I need this. I need that. And this is not the goal of retirement. And I hope the people listening, I hope that's not your goal. You're not supposed to retire to find a new job. You're supposed to retire and enjoy your life. My dad put it to me the best. He said, you work somewhere for 30 years. Your goal in life should be to be retired for at least 30 years. Um, and that made sense to me. And that, I'm hoping what everybody here wants to do. But I will warn you, it's not easy. Not working is very difficult. People don't know that. I didn't know that. I started to learn that. I felt like I had a lack of direction, a lack of purpose. Um, and it's very, very difficult. I had a very rough, I'd say 2 to 3 years because I didn't know what to do. I started hanging out with my friends, which is good. Hanging out with friends part is. I started having a beer here and there, drink here and there. I like to ride, so I'd go on a motorcycle ride and end up at, Taco Tuesday at some local place. And I'd have a beer and I'd come home, wait for her to come home, but no actual routine. So that started to get out of hand. My one beer with a friend turned into two, turned into three, turned into being drunk at my buddy's house all day. It's all right, here and there. And then the here and there started turning into being drunk at the buddy's house a lot. Or ended up at Taco Tuesday instead of one beer, two or three or four or 12. Um, and it was getting out of hand. Um, and I remember I rode a motorcycle home one day, and I most definitely should not have done that. But luckily for me, it was only around the corner. There were no issues. Medina comes home. She knows I rode the bike. She knows I'm drunk. And I'm like, I am so screwed. And she walks up in a very, very calm voice, says, that will never happen again. And then she walks away. And for those of you that are married, you know your wife wants to kill you, and she actually talks to you in a super calm voice and then walks away with no argument. Oh, you're screwed. You know that. You know you're screwed. So I fixed it. She was right. That was never gonna happen again. All right, so now I'm back to being bored because my friends all drink. So I'm looking for friends that want to do anything but drink, and I got nothing. That's not happening. so, so now I'm trying to find other things to do. I have no routine, and that is a huge problem. So I'll get into more of how I started to fix it, but you need to know it's not easy. Not working is not in your nature. You will not just show up at home retired and go, I'm never working again. My life is great. It's a great thought. And you might do it for 2 or 3 months, but you need a better plan. Trust me. It's very, 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 very hard. And we'll get into that more.
Yeah. And so as I noticed things starting to shift. The motivation for drinking instead of just, hey, I'm retired. I just want to, enjoy the day, turned into a daily thing, turned into too much drinking, turned into, some reckless stuff. The driving drunk, was obviously kind of, I think, the final straw. Um, and, he started rather than seeing a lot of the anger, um, that I saw that last part of his career, I saw a lot of sadness,
Depression.
depression, feeling lost, not quite sure knowing what to do, that lack of purpose. For him, his identity was he was all in. He was overinvested as a cop. That's all he did. That's all he loved to do. And then, in one day you sign a piece of paper and you no longer have that. And so it was quite a struggle. And then occasionally we would just be hanging around house and he would just start picking fights or pacing. He really had a difficult time calming down his brain and calming down his nervous system. And so I think that I know Cindy mentioned it um, prior, but the the body and the brain get wired for chaos. They get wired to react to chaos. And when you retire, it takes a while for your body and brain to become trained and conditioned for retirement, for stillness, for not doing things. And so he would start just chipping away a little bit. I would chip back. We'd get in arguments about dumb things. Um, and then one interesting thing that I noticed was I was starting to come home and I was super irritable all the time. And I didn't have a bad day at work. He started drinking less, so that really wasn't an issue. He was starting to, have dinner ready. It was great, but I was so, so, so irritable. And then one day we are sitting on the couch and the light bulb went on for me. And I turned to him and I said, I'm going to tell you this and I love you dearly. So please don't be upset. But I figured out why I'm always irritable. And he said, why is that? And I said, because you're always here.
She turned into me. The way I was when she was always home, you feel like you have no time to yourself. And it flipped. And when she said that to me, I knew exactly what you're saying.
So that for us was kind of an aha moment of okay, I need that decompression time. I didn't realize it because every time I came home while he was working, he was still at work. So I had that time kind of naturally built in, and I didn't quite see it for what it was. And then having to, make that shift to build in decompression time for me, just like when he was working and I was in school and always home, I had to give him that space to decompress when he got home. So we kind of had a bit of a role reversal, which, it was hysterical after we realized what was happening, because then we said, oh, okay, we know how to navigate this. We just have to flip it around. So that actually helped us out a lot.
Okay, figuring it out. First, talk about things you can do before you retire so you don't have to deal with my 2 or 3 years of insanity. Um, my biggest problem was my life was my job. I worked. That's all I did. That's literally all I did. Um, for several years in my career, I had to go bag in a trunk. We always said we'd go to work on Monday and we'll get home when we get home. Sometimes that was Monday, sometimes it was Thursday. Um, but I worked and that's it. I had no hobbies. Hobbies are a great thing to have. If those of you are getting near retirement and you have no hobbies, fix it. Find a hobby. And then the other problem is for me was family. We don't have many kids, so therefore we also don't have any grandkids. It's just us. So if you have family, you've got more things to put your time and energy towards your children, your grandkids, whatever. Um, Without hobbies, without family, without that, it's like she goes to work in the morning, I'm on my own all day. Um, and that was some of my problem. You don't want to be on your own all day with your own thoughts. So those are things you can do. Start thinking in advance. Hey, I'm going to retire. What am I going to do? And again, a lot of you are going to want to go to work, and I hope that's not your answer. But find a hobby, find something, and the transition will be a lot easier. So, how did I finally get out of it? Well, the key is routine. We've had a routine our whole life. Let's wake up to the stupid alarm clock, get our asses to work, work your hours, come home, rinse, repeat. And most of us, like, I'm retired, never waking up to another goddamn alarm clock, never doing this again. And that's a loss of routine. And with no hobbies, no family, no anything else, a loss of routine was the last thing. And once that vacation period, once that 3 months wears off, no routine is your enemy. You need to have a routine. So for me, the routine ended up being things I like. When this one here wakes up at 4:30 in the fucking morning. So I wish that wasn't when I got up, but sorry, but it is. I get up with her alarm so I can share my morning with her. I can go down, have coffee with her, spend my morning with her, and we're together before she goes to work. I enjoy that. I like seeing my wife before she goes to work instead of waking up to an empty house. And then I will get some stuff down around the house, and then I will get out and I'll go to the gym for a couple hours. Um, and then really my day's kind of free after that, so I kind of see what happens. Um, but usually it's chore wise, I'll find things to do. Silly things like decided to build a doghouse, spend a month building a doghouse. Didn't know how to do it, so I had to figure it out. Stuff like that to keep me busy. And it's working for me. If I can keep myself busy till about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm fine. She comes home at 6. I can handle myself for 3 hours and just enjoy some relaxation time. Um, but for me, that worked. It brought me out of my funk. It brought me out of all my problems. It brought me back to being happy, not needing to drink, not wanting to drink. Well, I still drink, just not, out of hand drink. Um, but it ended up making my retirement enjoyable. Now I'm coming up on 8 years in November. And the last 5 or 6 of them have been fantastic. The first 2 to 3, not so much. Um, so that is something you need to think of. What is your life going to look like when you retire? And I hope people listening have hobbies and family that they can split their time between, um, and just figure something out. And as long as you're ready for what's coming, you will transition a lot better than me, and hopefully only have a couple months of feeling lost instead of 3 years. But I don't care how prepped you are, you will have a time of feeling lost. You cannot wear this badge and do this work for as long as you do it and then not have it anymore and not feel lost. You're gonna feel a little lost. Um, Another thing you need to think about is our hypervigilance. During work, we're always, always, always paying attention to everything. So you sit with your back against the wall at restaurants. All of us do it. We don't even think about it anymore. It's just part of our nature. So you retire, and that's going to come in. It's still going to be there. You need to learn to let that go a little bit. Don't let it go too far. Because I did that and I started not noticing things. She'd notice things before me, which is bad. You don't want to go back to being general public with their head up their ass, but you do not want to be completely hypervigilant all the time because it causes you stress. And it's not just watching your back. One of the things that I didn't even notice for years was anytime I had to go anywhere, I don't care if it's a store, doctor appointment, our brains are not even thinking about it, jump into police mode. My brain's thinking, what's the fastest route to the doctor? What's the fastest route to the store? Got to take this way, that. Where's traffic going to be? It all processes instantly in your head. You're not actually thinking about it, but you do. And then you still feel rushed because you're like, I need to get here fast. And you don't anymore. You're not headed to a call. You don't need to worry about your fastest route to that call. But you've been doing it so long, you know you're doing it. Trust me. And once I learned to do that, I don't speed anymore. I drive slow. My stress on the road is gone. No more always stressed at slow drivers, always stressed, well, except for the really bad ones. But for the most part, you feel a lot better um, when you realize you're doing it and you can stop. Little things like that will make your life easier. Anyway.
Yeah, and just like he said, I mean, if having stuff outside of the job, I know I'm sure you guys hear it all the time, but it's so exceptionally important. And having that routine. One of the challenges when I was going through and reading on retirement, trying to figure out what the heck to do, because I felt so lost and unequipped, is I would often see, oh, you need to step outside your comfort zone. You need to go meet new people. And I mean, I work with cops, and I'm like, have you met cops and first responders? Have you met my husband? Because that's definitely not going to happen. Um, but really, one of the things we started doing, I want to say it's been probably like 4 or 5 years now, is we actually put a dry erase board in our pantry. And so we just write down as things come up in our brains, hey, we need to do this, or we want to do this. We just kind of make a list. And so in the morning, we'll wake up together, have our coffee together. I'll go to work. He'll hang out for a bit, do some things around the house, go to the gym, and then when he comes home, he'll look at the list and say, "Okay, let me pull one or two things off of this list." Some of them are big projects, some of them are just really small things, but that's been really helpful for us and for him, just in giving him stuff to do. Um, and then in terms of communication, we had to go back to basics. I mentioned the decompression time like I had to do for him when he was working. He had to start doing that for me. And we years back kind of came up with this 10-minute rule. And so rather than saying, "Oh my God, you're so annoying, just shut up, like give me time," because that would obviously cause fights, we just started saying, "Hey, I need 10 minutes." And I'd front load that coming home. If I really needed some time, I would say, "Hey, I need 20 minutes." And the point isn't so much, he's not sitting there with the timer clocking me at 10 minutes or 20 minutes. It,
Just means give her some space
yeah.
until she's ready.
And it's just a nice way of saying it. We know what each other means. Come home, hug, kiss. Okay, I'm gonna go, change out, decompress, and do that stuff. So that really worked for us. He's still finding, new things to do and kind of stepping out his comfort zone. He downplays the doghouse. It is more like a dog chateau that weighs about 1,000 pounds. So it's very, very reinforced. Um, so just some key takeaways here. Um, One thing that I will have first responders, even retirees do. I recommend doing this once a year, especially as you're getting close to retirement, is to take inventory and look at all areas of your life. Look at your job, look at your health, your support system, your relationships, hobbies, different activities. Identify the areas that are strengths for you, and then identify the challenge areas. With those challenge areas, this is going to really tell you where to go to train up. And if just like you would do any other training for the job, um, repetition, being intentional and consistent helps to train those in. And so, one thing that's helpful in retirement, but even during your job, as Cindy mentioned earlier, is hey, you guys get a lot of training and conditioning about how to react to things on the job, not so much on how to kind of switch modes and start responding, start powering down a little bit. And the earlier you can start that process and train things up, the better. Um, if you need to build out that support system more and you identify that that's a problem area, build out that support system. Another thing that was super helpful is actively restructuring the routine. One thing that I will see retirees do, and I think we have a few friends, few old partners that are retired, that are probably busier in retirement than they are when they were working. And so that is something I see a lot. And so one of the things when you're actively restructuring that routine is be sure to not overschedule yourself. Have scheduled intentional downtime because remember that brain and body are wired for very specific conditions on the job. We need to start shifting them on how to be off duty and then eventually how to be retired. So learning to kind of power down a little bit and being able to engage in those activities and hobbies. Do you want to mention family?
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is you retiring doesn't affect just you. And we don't think of that, to be honest with you. it's going to affect everybody around you. It's going to affect your kids, your wife, whoever you live. It's going to affect everybody. And the reason I say that is everybody has their own routine. You're at work, they're doing their own thing, whatever it is. If your wife works, she works. If your spouse is home, they're home. But everybody has their own routine. When you retire, you screw up everybody else's routine. They're not used to you being there. At first, they don't want you there because their routine is now, if you have, someone that stays home, their routine might be 3 hours of watching TV in the middle of the day, might be taking care of the kids, might be this, whatever. But I guarantee you, they're not used to seeing you until the end of the day. So now when you are always home, it's going to mess with their routine and they're not ready for it either. You're not ready for it. They're not ready for it. This is something you need to think about as a family. Um, so you can all be ready for what's coming because otherwise it will cause unnecessary fights. There's no reason to fight, but if you're not ready for it and your lovely routine gets messed up, it causes problems. So
Just learn to load the dishwasher properly and take out the trash. That's really all I ask. And then like, looking at those ways that you like cope with discomfort, because that's what you're going to default to in retirement as you're navigating that. And then ideally, training up for retirement, that starts right now. Um, if what's that?
do we have time for me to mention one thing?
Yeah, I mentioned
So if I can get, I don't really like talking finances, but if I can give you one little bit of advice regarding finances, I learned it kind of by accident. We worked a lot. And when I started working, we got all our paid overtime. We were making tons of money. And cops like toys. And we spend what we make. No matter how they could pay us $1 million a year and somehow we're still broke come payday. That's just the way we are. So well, my overtime went to zero all of a sudden because the state ran out of money and they said no more paid overtime. So everything's going to comp. And when it happened, I wasn't ready for it. And I went from making a lot of money to a lot less money. And it was a wake up call. And I had to relearn the budget, had to relearn the budget on a lower amount. And it hit me. So once I got through that, I never took paid overtime again. I took comp time for everything. And the reason being is as you get close to retirement, I don't know how great your retirement is, you giving up your overtime. And that little bit, if people aren't ready to give up that overtime, if they haven't relearned to budget, they're going to fool themselves into thinking, I can't live without my overtime. I can't do it. I can't afford things. I can't but you can. You just need to learn to budget better. But don't let that little piece keep you working forever. I know friends that wouldn't retire. They're literally working for free just their overtime because their check would have been the same. So they're just working for overtime. People get second jobs that don't want second jobs, but they have to because they can't learn to live without that overtime.
Mhm.
So my advice is learn to live without the overtime several years before retirement. Put it on the comp. Comp still gets paid out. It's a nice payout check at the end to pay off whatever debt you have or anything else to make your life easier. But you're used to going day to day on just your salary. It will make retirement easier financially. And that's all I can say on the finance part.
Yeah, and here's our contact info, or mine. And if you have questions for him, I'll just share it with him. But feel free to email me, hop on the website. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here, and then we can.
You could, yeah, that's fine. Medina, Anthony, you guys, what an amazing presentation. I love your relationship too, as obviously. How long have you guys been together?
23 years.
Yeah, good for you guys, man. That's awesome. You could tell it's such a sweet relationship and it's real, right? Which is nice. We have some questions and we're running up
Sure.
against the clock, so I'm going to try to be focused on this.
Okay.
So I'll go through here. This question is probably a little bit too broad, so keep the answer short.
Mhm.
But how's the retirement system in California? Did HR assist you with the process, forms, or did you have to do everything yourself?
Pretty much you do it yourself. Our retirement agency is CalPERS for almost everybody, except some of the larger agencies have their own. It's mostly online. They have a phone number if you have questions. The paperwork actually is pretty freaking simple. But you do have several choices on how to retire. Uh, so you do want to talk. So we call them, talk to them about our choices. Actually, a year before, you could submit paperwork to them, and they'll send you back a bunch of info on what you'll be getting paid on the various types of retirement to help
Okay.
you choose. But overall, overall, it's pretty
Very
simple
simple.
here.
How did you, the next question came in here. They said, how did you deal with the way that you were treated at your retirements? Did it take a long time for you to get through that? Or do you feel like, was there a way to be able to get past that hurt?
Well, like I said, I was already pretty pissed off the way the last 5 years of my career went and the way we got treated for those years. So that was just like icing on the cake. Did I get over it? No, no. I have nothing good to say about that agency, nothing good to say about those bosses, nothing good to say about the attorney general that happened to screw everything up. Damn, Laris. Um, but no, I didn't get over it. I don't ever want to see those people again as long as I live.
Yeah. And one of the things, like, because he was so angry, I forced him to have a retirement party. Because I said, we're not ending your retirement on that. We're gonna end it with the people around you that you want there that love you and supported you. And so we did that.
That's a great
That was
suggestion.
Mhm.
He
And,
didn't
and
throw me a very nice party where just my friend, just the people I wanted there came.
Mhm.
I'm sure he was very welcoming of that idea, right? Until, yeah,
Oh,
they feel
super.
that,
And then later, yeah, you were right. I said, I
right,
know,
right.
I know.
Uh, After retirement, would it be wise to visit the agency now and then, or until you could finally let it go, or you just kind of put it behind?
I,
Uh,
oh, you, oh,
Okay,
okay.
so this is an interesting question. You will be amazed at how fast you're forgotten. So
Yeah.
that's up to you actually. Um, you go from working there and knowing everybody, and all your close friends are obviously retiring sometime near where you retire. Y'all started the career together, y'all work together. But you'll go back and for a little while, it's fine. Um, not going to talk to my specific problem with the state, like I said, with the escort, but you'll be amazed at how fast you go in and you're like, oh, Tony's here. Oh, hey, let's go to lunch. To very quickly you walk in and you're getting looked at by some of the new kids that you don't know. And they're just like, who's the old guy?
Yeah.
And you get forgotten very, very fast. You think you're way more important than you are. I'll tell you that right now, because that's what I thought. I worked here a long time. People are gonna know me. I'm important here. I am not important there. They forgot me in a freaking heartbeat. So you'll experience the same thing. Just be ready for that. And if you want to go visit your friends while they're still there, I say do it, but just be ready for
Yeah.
that particular part.
Yeah.
Solid, solid advice. I love the piece on the finances, not living beyond your means on overtime, as well as what you just said there, which is we have a lot more self-importance than we actually do have. And
Mhm.
but you're a legend in your own mind, like Al Bundy, right?
Exactly.
Hey guys, I'll let you guys stick around here to address the other questions as well as the
Okay.
comments in the chat box. But thank you both very much for taking the time to do this today. And I look
Yeah.
forward to us hanging out and doing chatting more later on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
All right.